In the 1980s, pretty much all of the bands that we now refer to as hair metal, and back then they were actually known as glam metal, hard rock, heavy rock, or sometimes even light metal, well, they would all release a rock ballad or a power ballad as a single. And of course, it would have a catchy guitar solo that every guitarist just had to learn. Well, Great White did it in a way that, for me at least, distinguished them from everyone else in the genre with a song entitled House of Broken Love. Unlike the typical power ballad, this song has a more organic sound that is deeply infused with elements of blues and soul. There actually isn't much at all that is typical about this song. From the direct and heartfelt lyrics to the blues shuffle arrangement, it's a powerful and uncontrived reflection of the process of dealing with heartbreak in the tradition of the great blues artists. In just under 6 minutes, guitarist Mark Kendall takes 4 solos that are absolutely exquisite. His phrasing, the very specific articulation, the note choice, the timing and pace, and the paraphrasing or reiteration of certain motifs, sometimes in a different octave. There's just so much to it, including some particular subtleties that make this a song any guitarist who is a fan of the genre should study and revisit periodically. I first learned it over 30 years ago, and I'm still learning from it today. The way this solo came together is actually pretty intense. So apparently, Mark didn't have anything worked out, so producer and rhythm guitarist Michael Lardy and their manager Alan Niven got him in the studio at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and had him play for 10 hours until he had it down as you hear it on the record. I read an interview back in the day where he said his fingers were all bruised up afterwards because he was playing so hard for so many hours in a row, just trying to get the right notes, the phrasing, the intensity, and the emotion to come together in one solid performance. I think it was totally worth it. The most important of the 4 solos is the one that Mark plays in the intro, and in my opinion, it's nothing short of a masterpiece. This is the one that sets the tone and introduces the melodic motifs that will be repeated later on in the song. It's also the longest and the most elaborate, as well as the most challenging one to play exactly right, because it's full of little nuances in the timing and in the articulation. So let me play that one for you right now, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it and I'll explain how he develops those lines throughout the song. So the first thing to look at is definitely the accompaniment, because that's essentially the canvas for everything Mark is doing. So the entire thing is only 2 chords. You have A minor 7th and G major. The song is in the key of A minor, so making the home chord a minor 7th instead of just an ordinary minor chord is already more of a blues thing than what is typical in hard rock or classic heavy metal. The minor 7th chord carries more tension, and the going back and forth between the 1 minor 7th chord and the 7 chord feels particularly hypnotic. And that's because you never get the feeling of serenity or stability that you'd get from the A minor chord. Like that. Now in the middle solo, they also go up a fourth like they do in the verses to D minor 7th and C add 9. And that's just to give it a little more movement, as the pace has picked up a little bit at that point in the song. As I was saying earlier, the first solo introduces the main melodic motifs that will be used throughout the song. It's all based on the natural minor scale, with a couple of notes from the blues scale. And there's just sprinkled here and there to add a little color. So there's nothing fancy going on. This one is all about the right notes in the right place. So let's take a look at some of those motifs. Of course, the main one will be this inverted A minor 7th triad with the tonic at the end coming off the minor 3rd. This one will come back over and over again, and its repetition makes it get stuck in your head like nothing else. You have this one all over the place. And you also have this one with the 5th instead of the tonic. This is another one he uses a lot in the song. It's very much a blues thing, and what makes it cool is that once again you're insisting on the tonic, but this time from the 5th. So you go 5-1, and then you do it again, only instead of hitting the 1 dead on, you're bending to it from the minor 7th. When I talk about this stuff with scale degrees and intervals, I don't mean to imply that the guy was sitting there saying, oh, I'm going to double down on the tonic, but I'm going to hit it from the 7th this time. That's not the way most people work out a solo. It's just that there are terms that accurately describe these movements in a way that makes sense and makes it easier to contextualize them so that we can study and share what we learn from this great music. The lick he uses to close the first solo is also reiterated at the end of the main solo and during the outro as well. The first time he plays it, at the end of that first solo, it goes like this. Then, during the main solo, he goes to that lick twice. First towards the beginning, and then he goes back to it and even expands on it a little bit at the end of the solo. He also hits it at the end of the song, this time in the lower octave where it takes on a more melancholic kind of vibe. A solo like this needs that one fast lick that will stand out and kind of interrupt the rhythm a little bit. And of course, a guitarist like Mark Kendall knows that, so he came up with this little gem. It's just a 4-note pentatonic pattern, but instead of playing it in the usual box here, which feels a little bit stiff and mechanical, he plays it in this position where he can use hammer-ons and pull-offs around the 2 main notes, so he can get a nice circular lick that he can repeat smoothly as many times as he wants, and it sounds awesome. Great White was actually the very first big-time rock band I ever saw perform live. They were opening for Alice Cooper on the Alice Trashes the World Tour, and I was fortunate enough to catch that show at the old Montreal Forum on January 5th, 1990. So I got to hear them play House of Broken Love when it was still brand new. I can't remember if the music video was even out yet. I mean, it was 33 years ago. But I had been listening to the album a whole lot, and this song was a definite highlight both for the guitar playing and the singing, and as I recall, they absolutely nailed it. Mark Kendall's impeccable lead guitar playing was one of the elements of Great White's music that really drew me in when I first discovered the band. His solos are always exactly what the song needs, and he has a way of adding to the music in just the right amount to make it cooler without ever hitting that one note too many. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for a lot more. Cheers.